It's great to be here in Iowa. It's the first time in my life I've ever stepped foot in your state. So let me apologize up front. It's nice to be here. I heard that Steve King was putting on POTUS Fest here. I asked him if I could kindly come by and shop my wares, namely my book, Seize Freedom. And he said, sure, how much harm can there be in that? He'll get the bill later. I drove in last night from Detroit, about an 8.5-hour trip. Came by myself, and people asked me, why would you do that? And I said, because if you spent 8.5 hours in a car with me, it would violate the Geneva Convention. But it was well worth the trip. I've had an opportunity outside to meet many of you, some of whom actually don't dislike me intensely. And I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about the book and why I wrote it. I wrote it for two reasons. The first is I would do anything out of having to finish my honey-do list that my wife leaves me. And the second is far more important. It's because we live in a very chaotic time. From London to Wisconsin, from Libya to Yemen, all around the globe we see violence, we see disorder, and we see chaos. And we ask, what can we do about it? How can we ensure that the exceptional nation we've inherited can be bequeathed to our children? How can we conserve what we cherish and improve upon it for future generations of free people? And we will. It's my belief that this generation of Americans faces challenges that mirror those that were faced by the greatest generation. Now, when you think about it, the greatest generation is aptly named because they transcended a quartet of crises. They transcended the social, economic, and political upheavals of industrialization. They defeated an enemy in a world war. They defeated the rise of the Soviet Union as a strategic threat to the model of governance. And they addressed and resolved the question of whether the Constitution of the United States applies to all citizens equally, regardless of race. What do we today face? We face the social, economic, and political upheavals of globalization. We face a world war against an evil terrorist enemy. We face the rise of the communist Chinese superstate as a strategic threat and rival model of governance. And we face the question of whether or not a nation built upon self-evident truths can survive moral relativism. And the reason in which we find so much chaos today is that unlike the greatest generation, who in many ways faced and conquered their challenges consecutively, we must face and transcend our challenges as they occur simultaneously. Now, as a member of the Republican Party, we know, I know, that in such tumultuous times our party does not blanch from the challenges before it. Our party embraces the challenges before it. Because unlike the so-called progressives, we are not trying to fight to sustain the past. In the challenges of globalization, nothing could be clearer. We live in what is called a consumer-driven economy. I want you to think about the changes that that has entailed. If you consider GM in the 1970s, near and dear to my Detroit heart, it was a highly centralized, top-down organization. It can no longer be. And yet, what type of government do we have in the United States? The same one that was erected through the 30s and through the 60s when I was born. It remains a top-down, vertical institution. And, like GM modeled in the 1970s, a 1960s, 1970s model of government will no longer be operative in the 21st century. We must match a consumer-driven economy with a citizen-driven government. And what is so heartening is the fact that this is in many ways what the founders envisioned, because we must go away from big government and return to self-government. And at no point in time has this been easier. Think about the technological changes that we've seen in our lives to date. This is the apogee in human history of your ability to receive and collect information and base your own decisions upon it and to implement those decisions, both in your economic life and in your public life. From a BlackBerry, you can reach across the disparate centers of Earth and communicate with another human being. You can purchase a good or service from your laptop at home. This is antithetical to the liberals' model of government, whereby your decisions and your prosperity and the fruits of your labor are continually centralized in an elitist government based out of Washington that believes it knows how to better run your life than you do. In short, my fellow Republicans, our entrepreneurial, constitutionally based model of government that we are supporting is the one that is in tune with the times, and the one that we see is the wave of the future. And I believe it will be us, as Republicans, who will help lead America back to ascendancy, that we will again champion the virtues of liberty and prosperity and help to regain the purposeful republic that we inherited. Because despite the voices that tell us America's best days are behind her, voices that many of us heard throughout the 70s, and at that point in time saw proven wrong by Ronald Reagan and the American people, you are being called upon as sovereign citizens of the United States to rectify, guide, and improve your servant government in Washington, and you will. And when you do, 20 years from now, the next generation of free Americans will thank you, and they will remember the words of the poet Rupert Brooke, who said, "Now God be thanked, who has matched us with his hour and caught our youth and wakened us from sleeping. You, my friends, are wide awake. You stand in the service of your nation, and for that I am grateful. And for you, my children, and all of our children, I wrote the book. And as a one-day only deal, you can purchase a copy of my book for $20 unsigned, or if you get it signed, it will cost you $15. As you see, I am endeavoring to implement an entrepreneurial model all my own. Thank you very much, Hawkeyes.